you know, the original saga was about the father, the children, and the grandchildren. And I mean, that's not a secret to anybody. It's even in the novels.
Hello there and welcome back to another highlights and review video. Today we're talking about the fourth book in the New Jedi Order series, which is also the first book in the Agents of Chaos duology, titled Jedi's Trial, titled Hero's Trial. This isn't the Clone Wars multimedia project. Again, we're just going to go through my highlights from the novel and then I'll give a quick review. If you feel like it, you can go check out my New Jedi Order History of video where we get a little bit into Vector Prime, and then I've been covering the novels ever since. Make sure you go check out the channel HoloNet, who did a really great documentary about the 19-book series, and also make sure you go subscribe to OG Star Wars, the best Star Wars channel on the platform, and also the Star Wars Marvel Purist, who is the keeper of the holocron, and both these channels are currently covering the New Jedi Order during this Renaissance period. Lastly, go subscribe to Hidden Gems, who has posted all of the New Jedi Order series on his channel in audiobook form for anyone to listen to. So I highly recommend you follow along and get into this series. It's absolutely incredible and it will change the way that you see Star Wars. So let's get into it. So we start out with Harar, who had 3 fingers on his hand as he had sacrificed them in rituals as a means of escalating himself among the Vong. Dagara has an exchange with a priest among his captives, who said virtue is their reward. He does not fear a death suffered in the cause of truth, the alleviation of suffering, or the abolishment of evil. He says, our gods have not abandoned us, we still have the Jedi. They go on to have a really good conversation about the Force. It's something you will never touch, but I could swear you spring from its dark side. He says the Force is a stubborn faith. If we are ever to rule here, we need to understand how this Force binds these beings together and eradicate the Jedi. We move on to a ceremony for Chewbacca on Kashyyyk. Relra's there, and anyone that's read The Heir of the Empire will remember him as the Wookiee with the speech impediment, so Leia can understand him when he's talking. There's also Mala and Lumpy who are there, obviously Chewbacca's son and wife. We're told that Lando could not attend, and also Mara Jade was absent because of her illness. C-3PO replays images in his mind of time spent with Chewbacca. The book actually describes loads of scenes throughout the original trilogy. It's really great. 3PO struggles to understand the feeling of sorrow. We then get a call back to the courtship of Princess Leia, one of my personal favourite EU novels, and the poem that he recites to Han Solo. Han wonders if he could use the Force, would he use it for vengeance, although nothing could bring Chewbacca back. He knew he had to join the fight. He's obviously been absent from the last couple of novels. Mala gifts him Chewbacca's bowcaster and a hide pouch which hung lower than his knees. If only Chewbacca could see him now. Waru and Lobaka would be assuming Chewbacca's life debt. It ends with Han's death, not the Wookiees. Han recalls past times the Wookiees have helped him, including the Wookiee that died protecting Leia from Noghri assassins in Heir of the Empire. So another callback there. They grant Han time to grieve. A life debt is more than just physical protection. The Vong are temporarily using tech to guide them closer to the core. They had attacked a library planet in order to render all of the stored information into Vilips. I believe the planet was a Boriskai. Searching the documents for information on the Jedi, they conclude it must have been purged or that the Jedi withheld it. They discover the Jedi used to uphold peace and justice across the galaxy, but there is no record of a Jedi army. They conclude that the Jedi were also purged. They wonder if they could ally with the Sith. We then get introduced to Aelon and Vergere, and the return of Nominor. He talks of the illness-inducing spores that killed hundreds apart from one, referencing Mara Jade. which had not spread to the Jedi. Han admits that he does not want the heartache to fade. He says, "I'm losing him." He doesn't want to move on with his life until he makes Chewbacca's death count for something. He wants to make the Vong pay for what they've done, basically. A Vong assassin excels over these captives. Air is sucked out of this inhibition field and they all die violently. The assassin's deliberately prevented from escaping and dies as well. Hundreds of spontaneous tiny life forms begin to appear. They're called Boathouse, the carrier and byproduct of the toxin. They grow rapidly but are short-lived, precipitated by the assassin's breath. They want to have Alon captured by the New Republic, pretend to have fled, and share information on the Vong. The end goal is basically to take out as many Jedi as possible. And Han still isn't ready to fly the Falcon. He finds his own way back to Coruscant. I should have been recording just now. Lil Jaina just came into the room and she's like, "Where is it?" I'm like, "What?" She's like, "The beer that you bought." And then I tried to gaslight her, but I couldn't lie to her. Now returns the beer in the background for all the OG Scran fans. Han Solo did not grow up with a supportive family or a stable home, but don't confuse refusing help with not needing it. The Jedi at this time are being blamed for everything, even the Vong invasion. We're introduced to Vicky Sesh, who said, "In weakening the Jedi Knights, we only weaken ourselves." Luke is then united with Mara on Coruscant. She is pale and really frail. Unintentional rhyme. She has weakened since the death of Alegos and Ethor. Mara recalls a time that Vader forced someone against a bulkhead for disrespecting the Force. Luke has paid too much attention to the Force as power at the expense of understanding a more unifying Force. And I thought it was cool that Lucino did that phrase, whereas we know that the last book in the series is called the Unifying Force, so a little bit of foreshadowing there, or whatever. He says, "I've had a harder time fighting myself than I did fighting my clone." A callback to The Last Command. Mara mentions Luke's lost loves, including Callista. A battle ensues with the Vong, who vanish, leaving an escape pod containing Alon and Vergere. Han recalls the first time he ever saw the Falcon roughly 30 years ago on Nar Shaddaa. We get a description of how Han won the Falcon and his first moments aboard her. The ship really was like the encapsulation of his and Chewie's adventures and misadventures. The compartments used for smuggling spice now stored family luggage. I thought that was funny. The Falcon was a classic, like the J-Type 17 Nubian. I like that at this time the prequels were being released and they could now touch upon references from that era as well. Han is united with someone called Reo, who got him into the smuggling business. He called him Slick, a name I've not heard in a long time. Call back to A New Hope. One of their mutual friends, Rek, is working for the Vong as a mercenary, part of the Peace Brigade, who are scouting worlds for the Vong to recreate what they did on Cernpadal. And this is also how Reo's wife died, similar to Chewbacca. There's a New Republic meeting. They're trying to determine where the Vong came from and what their end goal is. They ask if Palpatine knew about the Vong. They look into records of the Outbound Flight project. Thrawn and the Chiss had been on the Outer Rim in defense against any unknown invader. They then discuss, kind of summarize what we know about the Vong culture and biotech. Leia tells Han that he really needs to talk to Anakin and help him through his guilt. He says he doesn't need me, he has the Force. Leia replies, he needs your love, the Force can't grant him that. The New Republic are running tests on Alon and Vergere, who's actually referred to as her pet. They know it's a trap, but still want to interrogate them, even if using the Jedi to do it. Anakin then tracks Han to the docking bay and gifts him a cylinder. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, right? Like a survival tool. This is something that Chewbacca had made for Anakin. Alon and Vergere are taken to Wayland. We're then told that the Emperor's storehouse at Mount Tantus had been destroyed a few years earlier. There's loads of species that had come to Wayland to recover cultural artifacts that belonged to them. Elon gives information about Vong military tactics, and a Vong intruder rips off his Uglif masker to attack her. Then Nominor leading the Vong attack Wayland. The scene of Chewbacca's death replays in Han's mind, and Lucino does a really great job at summarising and describing this moment. Reo asks Han about making the Kessel Run in under 12 parsecs. Han is vague as to whether it's true or not. Turns out Han is going to Ord Mantell, which is exactly where Leia is going on a diplomatic mission. The planet was full of refugees in terrible conditions, like Leia had said. We're told that the Trandoshians come from the same star system as Kashyyyk, and were instrumental in persuading the Empire to enslave the Wookiees, even though the Trandoshians had suffered slavery themselves. One of them recognises Han. He wonders if it could be Bossk, and later on it's revealed that it is. Bossk says, "I heard you lost the Wookiee. You let a moon come crashing down on him. That's what I'd do if I had a Wookiee following me around." And then Han throws a punch at the end of the chapter. We discover that Verzier's species had been taken from the same galaxy as the Jedi 2 generations earlier. The Vong Scouts also took humans. Creatures like Verzier were given to children of prosperous domains as pets. And I believe some of the species were genetically modified as well for that purpose. After the fight with Bossk, Han Solo is imprisoned and then he gets bailed out of his cell. He tells Bossk that they'll have to do this again. And then Bossk says, "Count on it, Solo." They were released by someone called Bosby, who turned out to be an old friend of Han's called Big Bungie, and he looked like a Hutt mixed with a human. And he's really thankful to Leia for killing Jabba the Hutt, which gave him business opportunities on Tatooine. He claims that the Peace Brigade had been working with the Vong pre-invasion, spreading anti-Jedi sentiment, handing refugees over for sacrifice, and convincing worlds to side with the Vong. Han and company retreat to the Happy Dagger ship during the Vong attack. The artificial gravity generators temporarily get damaged, and it says they float like divers swimming to the surface of the sea, are then thrown to the floor. The station is damaged and the atmosphere is sucked out, as well as people and droids, which are being pulled towards the breach. Han, Reo and Fosco are sucked towards it as well. They manage to hold on, but then Fosco is hit by a bit of debris and then he falls into the breach. Roa, being older, was too weak to hold on, and he actually allowed the current to take him away while Han reached out for him. Han screams until his throat hurt. It turns out the victims weren't being sucked by gravity, but inhaled by whatever took a giant bite out of the Wheels Rim station. On the other side of the hole was the mouth of a Yuuzhan Vong dread weapon for taking captives. The button for the blast shield is close to the breach. An alien from the species called Rin was holding on to Han, and he planned to drop onto a strut, then allow Han to drop onto him to be close enough to tap the activation button with his foot. If they didn't attempt it, they wouldn't be holding on for long. The alien then tells Han, "If we don't, then I'll see you in hell." An obvious callback to Empire. In attempting this, Han flew past the Rin, who grabbed onto him with his tail. It's a really epic moment. You can kind of visualize all this going on around them. There's a moment after where the Rin calls for an astromech droid using his nose like a flute. The droid comes and opens the gate for the hangar. Han wanted to save his friend, but had a ship full of innocent civilians, and at that moment he realised that he was in the same position that Anakin had been on Cernpedal, forced to choose between a ship full of strangers and the life of one friend. This pierced his heart like a vibroblade. He swore to himself if he made it home in one piece, he would put things right with his estranged son. I wrote here that I really enjoyed the dynamic between Han and the Rin as well. It's really great stuff. An informant tells Rek Desh about the Yuuzhan Vong defectors. In return, the informant wants to be made aware of the Peace Brigade's future dealings with the Vong. C-3PO was puzzled by anti-droid sentiment and was still traumatized by his encounter with Nominor on Romulan. He actually feared being deactivated and ceasing to exist. Han and the Rin part ways, and at this moment I took a note saying that I was gutted because I was really hoping that they'd be new companions. Han then meets with C-3PO and then he takes him to Leia. Han and Leia have a pretty intense conversation, more like an argument, before he leaves. Han goes to a cantina. He tells the bartender that alcohol isn't the answer. The bartender says, "What is the question?" He says, "How do you change the past?" The bartender says, "By changing how you remember it." Han thinks of returning to Coruscant to do something more constructive. He believes it's not fair to blame Leia for Roa, just like it's not fair to blame Anakin for Chewbacca's death. He learns of where Wreck and the Peace Brigade are going. He has C-3PO mimic Leia's voice to get him passage on a vessel to Belbringi. It references that 3PO had done this before to fool Thrawn's forces, which I believe was in either Heir of the Empire or Dark Force Rising. C-3PO thinks twisting the truth is as confusing as ceasing to exist, before Han promises to download his memory to a data storage facility if he agrees not to tell Leia where he's going. Elon flirts with the character called Showalter as she puts on her Uglif masker. She is disguised as his human wife, and other officers are disguised as her decoys. This is to move her safely from Myrkr to Coruscant. Han is now on a shuttle called the Queen of Empire, basically a cruise ship that's fallen on hard times. There weren't enough utensils for eating, and Han remembered the tool Anakin had given him, which had a fork. When he reaches for a piece of charred steak, he comes face to face with the Rin from before. The Rin introduces himself finally as Droma, and then Han gives the fake name of Roke Lamu. Droma implies that Rin are mind readers, and then they go to a restaurant that refuses to serve the Rin. Then we get some history about the Rin species. They don't know which planet they originate from. They have healing abilities, and people make up false claims about them. On Coruscant, Luke speaks with Worf Skidder, Kip Duron, and the other Jedi about the Vong defectors. The defectors claim to have information about the illness that the Vong introduced long before the world ships landed on Helska 4. Worf believes that the Vong know about Mara and intend to do the same to them. Luke suggests that he and Mara meet with the Vong alone. The rest of the group intend for all of them to be together. I noticed that Tenel Ka is one of the Jedi, full name Tenel Ka Jo. Basically, she's the daughter of Tenennial Jo and Prince Isolde from The Courtship of Princess Leia. Again, one of my favourite EU novels. If she was mentioned in the previous NGO books, I hadn't picked up on it. OG Star Wars is currently having listen parties for the Young Jedi Knights novels, which you should all join in on. And that's where I kind of put these two things together, that this was the daughter of Tenenel Jo. Things like this are real payoffs for me, and you get this sort of thing all the way through the expanded universe. The more you read, the more you're rewarded. It's awesome. We get a real glimpse at how well Han plays Sabacc. He told Droma it once won him a ship and a planet. There's another Courtship of Princess Leia reference to when Han won Dathomir for Leia. The Rin designed some of the Sabacc cards, which were never meant to be used in a game. It has links to their spirituality. He uses the cards to lay out Han's past, present, and possible future, including potential danger for his youngest son. The Vong discuss battle plans. They had awarded the New Republic small victories, including Ord Mantell. Nominor is mortified to learn that the Peace Brigade planned to retrieve Aelon and return her to them. In their cabin on the Queen of Empire, Showalter is with Aelon and Vergier. Two officers turn up with a code, and then two more. Showalter discovered the first set of people were frauds, and then a fight ensues. Vergier was able to temporarily repair Showalter's wound. I can't remember if it describes how she does it, but it comes into play later. But it does say that he would need further medical attention. While trying to get away from Droma's annoyances, Han is intercepted by Showalter, who is happy to see him. He actually thinks that Han was sent there to help him out, and then Han accepts the task of hiding the defectors. The ship is then raided by what they think is the Vong, but is actually the Peace Brigade. Luke then tells Leia that Obi-Wan once told him that there is more to Han than meets the eye, and not just anyone would have a Wookiee willing to be their companion. C-3PO saw the news about the raid on the Queen of Empire and said, "But Mr. Solo." So he kind of gave away that he knows where Han is. He justifies not telling Leia that he was on the ship because they both had told him sometimes it's better not to know what someone else is thinking. Han had agreed to help Aelon only because Showalter took a blaster to the gut for her, so he must think that she's important. Han had to choose between fulfilling his promise to Roa by finishing his business with Wreck, or safely taking Aelon to cure Mara. The Vong planned to use Dovin Basils to prevent Wreck from returning Aelon, and then the New Republic will think this was just another attempt for the Vong to retrieve her, and they'll also make it appear like they were chased away. During an intense battle, the Vong warship disappeared in the blink of an eye, or rather, it jumped 200 kilometers away. When Han sees Wreck, his blood boils. He said it's personal and goes after him without a plan. His blaster's empty, but he still uses it to steal a functioning one from a raider. Wreck shows a creature to Aelon which causes her Uglif masker to remove itself. It retracts and spills on the floor. Han tells Wreck his new employers killed Chewbacca and Rey's wife. Wreck orders Han to move to a drop shaft which leads to the cargo hold. Then Han drops down it, hoping his travel pack might cushion his fall. The Falcon turns up and takes out the Dovin Basil. I don't truly understand how, but I guess Droma jumped in after Han and somehow saved him by breaking his fall. You can let me know in the comments what I've missed there. They reach the docking bay just as the Falcon arrives, and then seeing Han, C-3PO tells R2 that no matter the odds, there's always a chance of beating them. There's another play on the whole don't tell me the odds thing, right? Han cuts past everyone and he goes straight to the cockpit with Droma. Leia tells Luke to leave him alone. She thinks that he needs this. Droma said to Han, "You'd have to be someone of considerable dimensions to fill this seat." Han looked at Droma in the co-pilot seat and for a moment saw Chewbacca sitting there. He replied, "You can say that again." He and Droma chase after Rex's shuttle, and he plans to board it using a tractor beam and a grapple line. Nominor and Harar will give him time so that their skippers will be destroyed and make their retreat look authentic. Nominor is okay with looking cowardly for the greater cause. Han puts on a spacesuit and climbs over to the shuttle's airlock. The interior of the ship was covered in a black substance. The crew, including Wreck, were dead and blood had erupted from their eyes, nose and ears. The creature that had intimidated Aelon's Uglif was out of its case dead on the floor. Aelon and Vergere were found in a cargo hold, unconscious and unharmed. Aelon said what Han had seen was the aftermath of Bohaus, an airborne blood agent bioweapon. She also said that the Vong were immune to this. Droma explains to Han that Vergere isn't intergalactic, that he recognizes her species. They don't trust them and piece together that if the Vong knew Aelon was on the Queen, why would they send Peace Brigade to retrieve her? Why wouldn't they do it themselves, right? Han said he faced Vong before. They don't miss this often. It's like they are trying to be convincing that they want their property back. According to Aelon, only a Vong handler can unleash the creature, but its handler was dead. So Aelon clearly unleashed it from the safety of the cargo hold. He orders Droma to head towards the Vong ship. He knows they won't fire on him, and he basically plans to send them back in an escape pod. Once the jig is up, Aelon said, "One breath for you, one for the Jedi." As she exhaled, the pod door closed with them inside. Han used the tool Anakin gave him to puncture the air tube in his spacesuit to get clean air while the toxin killed Aelon. Vergere escapes in a pod after using a drink bulb to pour tears out of her eye. She said, "Thank you for giving me the chance to find my own people and make sure this bulb gets to the Jedi." It's left ambiguous whether the pod escapes or was destroyed. The New Republic go through Han's report, basically explaining the plot of what we've read so far. They also wonder who leaked the information to the Peace Brigade. Do they have a traitor or a mole? The Jedi await the results of Vergere's tears in the drink bulb. Basically, they were a cure for Mara's disease, but they proceed with caution. Vergere had applied her tears by hand to Showalter's blast wound. Luke forced the cup to his hand and tried to drink it, but Mara intercepted and did it first. She is aware that this might only be a temporary solution. She put some on her hand and then her hand absorbed it. She said it feels like all her cells are bathed in light. When Luke looks towards her, she looks like she's illuminated. And then he whispers in her ear, "We have our victory." Han was still unsure how he knew that Elon would breathe toxins. He had heard a voice say, "poisonous air." So I'm wondering if this was Vergier, or he thinks that maybe Chewbacca was talking to him in the Force, but he doesn't say that out loud. He then apologises to Anakin for the way he's behaved since Chewie's death. He also reflects on these events and says, "You go looking for something but find something else. It's like it was the Force at work." Han will be leaving again to find Roa. Leia isn't happy about it though. He kisses her palm and said, "Tuck that in your pocket and keep it for later." And then that chapter closes out with 3PO and R2 having a pretty funny interaction. 3PO is now starting to think a bit more like a human, oddly enough. Harar and Nominor explain their failure to the Vong commander. The fleet will retreat to Hutt space under leadership of Malek Kar, and Savang La will accept no more failures on Nominor's part. He states they may have a new ally who reached out from Coruscant. Han and Droma spend 2 whole days fixing up the Falcon. They have some banter. Han doesn't want him getting too comfortable in the co-pilot chair. And then, all jokes aside, he says to Droma, "We will find your people. We will find your sister, even if we have to search half the galaxy." And then you've got Andor, who gave up after 1 episode, right? Anyway, back to real Star Wars. Honestly, this book was absolutely incredible. Going into it, I heard murmurs that it wasn't as good as the previous 3 books. But for me, like, this hit all the right checkpoints. If you're a Han Solo fan, this is a book for you. This is a pure Han Solo story, but it never feels disconnected from the overall NGO storyline. And funnily enough, after reading this book, it's really put me in the mood to go back and read both of the Han Solo trilogies, which up until now have been pretty low on my priority list in terms of EU novels. I continue to enjoy my New Jedi Order read through for the first time, and this book has not halted me. No matter what Star Wars Theory and Stupendous Waves say, this book series is in no way boring, especially if you're reading or listening to the full book, not just the 3-hour abridged version, which is all filler, right? 3 hours of filler. Don't let the big corporate channels put you off. Like, this is real Star Wars and it's fantastic. Other elements I enjoyed from this novel, I really liked how it brought, like, personally for me, I liked a lot of the callbacks to The Courtship of Princess Leia. This being James Luceno's first novel, you can tell that he did his due diligence and went back and read a lot of those other books. You've got Heir to the Empire callbacks, and we do know that James Luceno did in fact go back and pretty much read everything, and you know from his other books that he does enjoy putting in these references, not just as a, you know, like an Easter egg, but as a way of kind of filling out the universe and tying it all together, you know. Really respecting the fans that love reading this stuff. I really liked how Han came into contact with loads of friends from his past. I like how it used those interactions as a way to make Han see Anakin's point of view, put himself in his shoes and kind of understand, like, right, I get it now. I get why he made that decision, and I don't blame him for it either. I really enjoyed that Mara Jade got cured at the end. It's a real weight off our shoulders, and I'm really interested to see what happens with Vergier in the future. I assume she survives. Well, without a spoiler alert, I know she survives. And I guess a lot of the Troy Denon haters just can't stand it, right? The fact that when it comes to the Vong, they're not so black and white, right? Like, obviously they have these like principles and ways that they operate, but it seems like they're a bit more capable of, like taking losses and being a bit more strategic in order to get the outcome that they want. It's not all about like honor and death, and like they're willing to take a loss. And it was just really great to get into Han Solo's headspace. He's been absent from the last couple books. He just comes in drunk and scruffy for like a couple scenes. But here he is, kind of just going through it, trying to just deal with it his own way. As a Star Wars fan and someone that grew up on the original trilogy, um, Han Solo, as much as I enjoy his character, he was never someone that I would have put in like my top five, right? I would put Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, mm, wow, that's maybe a video for a different day. Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader. I like. Oh, now that I'm getting into the EU, it changes, right? I like Cade Skywalker a lot. Um, I think Han Solo might be like fifth. I think Han Solo after this novel has upped in the rank, and I just can't wait to read more. And I'm really ecstatic and buzzing that the next book is Ages of Chaos Part 2. And I know it's probably not going to be a similar kind of novel as I've learned from Onslaught and Ruin. But it's going to be great. And, oh no, there's 19 books.
I don't know. There's just so many of them. It's ugh. It's hard to keep track of like what era they're in too, whether you're in Legacy or NJO, and even what people are talking about are so impossible to pin down because it's over 20 books. It's not like 6 movies. It's like 20 books.
I'm going to be sad when this series is done. I'm going to be absolutely gutted. So, got a lot to come, guys. Next up is. No, I'm not done talking about the book. What else we got? Han's new kind of sidekick, right? Droma. I really liked that character. I liked the interactions between him and Han. I think, he's really sardonic and kind of tongue in cheek, and he was kind of quirky, right? And I think he kind of helped bring out the best in Han in a weird way. Han needed this kind of other person to play off of, and he just filled the role really, really brilliantly. It was good, really clever on Lucino's part. One thing I did notice was the kind of lack of Jason and Jaina. Luke had a couple scenes, Anakin had a couple of integral scenes in terms of advancing Han's journey. It was just so different than anything else I've read in the EU, and I'm happy I read it. I'm happy. Like, books like this make you so glad you set aside the time and invested in this story. It's masterclass, man. It's so good. I can't hype it up enough. I'm sure there's more that will come to mind once I've finished editing this video. Next up is Ages of Chaos Part 2, Jedi Eclipse. And I hope you'll tune in for that. I hope you'll follow along. By the time you've watched this video in the future, there will also be another pure, unadulterated Star Wars for this novel taking place on the Star Wars Marvel Purists channel. And as far as I'm aware, I'm going to be a part of that. We'll have OG Star Wars, so we'll have the Vector Prime gang back together, which will be awesome. Go back and check out those streams. It'll be well worth your while. It was a good time. And as I say, dive into the New Jedi Order, real Star Wars, the sequels that George authorized and helped develop. Amazing. Absolutely stellar. So as always, folks, long live the expanded universe, and lang may your lums reek.